All right, looks like we're rolling here. Hope everybody's doing well. All right, going to give everybody just a few minutes to see who we got tuning in today. Feel free to drop me a comment. All right. Hey, man, how's it going? Let me know how you'd like me to refer to you. 112, yeah. All right, so we're going to be looking at, I got to go over to Ecclesiastes here. I'm still in Ezekiel from the previous broadcast. And if I look a little bit discombobulated, I've been reorienting everything on my desktop. I've got the 2-monitor thing going on here, which is making my life a whole lot easier. But it does require a little concentration to make sure I'm managing everything, seeing as how I am kind of new at this whole... 112 it is, yeah, 112, very good. All right, and let's see, I'm just getting my coffee going here. Let me know what kind of coffee you guys like. I'm kind of a Dunkin' Donuts guy myself. Curious to know how many Dunkin' Donuts fans we got out there, and oh, there we go. And versus how many Starbucks fans, or sometimes I, resort to Folgers instant crystals too. I know it's disgusting, but it's quick and easy. All right, so let's get rolling here. So we've got the last couple of broadcasts we've looked at, last couple of broadcasts relating to Ezekiel, we've looked at Ezekiel. I'm sorry, I keep saying Ezekiel because I've been looking at it in the Hebrew script podcast. Here we're looking at, let me say it right, Ecclesiastes or Qohelet. I should stick with the Hebrew to make sure I get it right. And so in the previous 2 broadcasts, we've looked at Qohelet chapter 1, verse 1 and Qohelet chapter 1 and verse 2. And the reason that I often refer to this as Qohelet as opposed to Ecclesiastes is simply because, I don't know why this is still highlighted here, is because in Ecclesiastes, it begins Divrei Qohelet, the words of Qohelet, or you can say the words and affairs of Qohelet. So just by way of recap, we said that the word Divrei is, it comes from the word davar in Hebrew, which if you have studied Hebrew at all, this is probably one of the first words that you've learned if your approach was biblical Hebrew. It's kind of funny. I just realized I'm drinking Dunkin' Donuts coffee out of my Starbucks mug. Honestly, coffee's like a drug to me. I understand. I understand. All right. All right, here we go with the Dunkin' Donuts coffee in the Starbucks mug. All right, so Divrei Qohelet, so davar, D-A-V-A-R, or Dalet Bet Resh, is one of the first biblical Hebrew words that one will learn. And so it can mean here, the words and affairs of. We have a construct, the words and affairs of. Qohelet, whoever Qohelet is, we said we're going to investigate that as we go through the text. Obviously, I have a conclusion already, but I want to walk you through this step by step because I think it's important, to make sure that we're all learning the process of how to, we would say, exegete. And I'll throw that in the chat just in case anybody who's watching, exegete, that's the verb. The noun is exegesis. It comes from Greek. So I put these terms in the chat for you just in case you're not familiar with them. And it's used differently. Jewish scholars tend to use it different than Christian scholars sometimes where in Jewish tradition, exegesis can just refer to interpretation in general. At least in my experience, Christian scholars tend to use it in a more specific way, which would mean to lead out. It's more of an I can't even say the word etymology. More of an etymological approach, which means trying to lead out from the text what the original authors, redactors meant. And so that's the process we're going through here. So, Divrei Qohelet, the words of Qohelet, son of David, ben David, melech b'Yerushalayim, king in Jerusalem. We had looked at the Greek, and over here, let me just scroll up, kind of keep this going. All right, and I have the translations here for you, but you can't really read them, can you? All right, that looks much better. Okay, so in the Greek, where we get rhemata Ecclesiastes, okay, so the words of the Ecclesiast, EU, and we're, if you haven't heard before, I'm using, hey, shalom, shalom. All right. Hebraico proficial. Okay, I think I got that right. So we said that in Ecclesiastes or Qohelet 1:1, so rhemata Ecclesiastes, so the words of the ecclesiast, okay, and then EU. What I was just sharing is that I am, trying to use modern Greek pronunciation. I don't speak modern Greek. My training with regard to Greek anyway. Hey man, welcome from Brazil. Baruchim habayim. All right. And so the words of the Ecclesiast, the son of you, if you're watching from or if you're watching, if you're using the pronunciation, the Erasmian pronunciation, you would say huiu, but in modern Greek pronunciation, which I find to more closely resemble the koine or the kini, we would say, then it would be EU. So EU David or David. So the son of David, okay, and then Basileos, the king of Israel, okay, so the king of Israel, and Jerusalem, okay, in Jerusalem. You can see that I'm still having trouble shaking the Erasmian pronunciation that I've been using for the better part of 30 years. All right, and so, but the point is the Greek is very much a literal translation of the Hebrew here, so there's nothing really exegetically to take away from, nothing of substance anyway, to take away from the Greek. But then when we go over to the Aramaic, and this is where all the highlights come in, and I'm going to just zoom in for you, and so Pitgamei Nivoah, so the words of prophecy, the It Nabi Qohelet, so which Qohelet prophesied, and Hu Shlomo, he is Solomon. So this is like a parenthetical thought. Hu Shlomo Bar David, okay, the son of David, Malka, the king, Dahava b'Yerushalayim, who was in Jerusalem. And you can see, I'm going to move this up here. So this is my translation of it, which I produced for Accordance Bible software some years ago when I was part of a team, doing that. The words of prophecy, which Qohelet, who is Solomon, the son of King David, who is in Jerusalem, prophesied. So we can see from the Aramaic, the way I highlighted it here, that the highlighted words are the Aramaic translations of the Hebrew. Everything else is an addition. We have the mention of prophecy here. And so, according to Ecclesiastes, this book is not prophetic at all. According to the Targum of Ecclesiastes, it's prophetic. Okay, everything about it needs to be read prophetically. And so we would say that the Targum of Ecclesiastes is not reading... you're absolutely right. I see the comment there. It looks like more of an interpretation. So here's the thing. If you read if you study the Targumim, and Targumim is just the Hebrew plural of the Aramaic term, but the whether you call them the Targums or the Targumim, um, by and large, it's a literal interpretation or a literal translation, I mean to say, by and large. But depending on which which book of the Targumim you're looking at, and which section of the book you're looking at, you will see that it is wildly different. So let me just pull up here. Yeah, here's here's a fun one. Okay, so this is you can see here the Targums of Esther here, although you can't see the spine, can you? The Targums of Esther, and I just want to show you visually. So if we there's two Targums to Esther. So there's Rishon, which would be the first one, and then there's Sheni, which means second, and those are just Hebrew terms, first and second. And so I'm gonna, just as an example, this is a highly interpretive one, and let's go over to chapter 5. I mean, there's so much here where I just want you to see the kind of the layout of this. All right, so this is, I'm being selective here. This is chapter 6. And the first verse, let me see if I can line this up here for you. So the first full verse, I think right around here, is verse 2. And hopefully you can see that most of what you see there is not in italics. So if it's in regular, the regular typeface, not in italics, then it means that it's basically a literal translation, okay? However, when you see italics, and I'll put this up again, that is a visual way of showing where you have interpretation, okay? And hopefully that just gives you some idea. All right, so when you look at that then, there's not a whole lot of interpretation there. However, you look at verse 1 of chapter 6, and let me just stretch that out, and you can see almost everything's in italics, okay? Now, this is what we expect with the Targums to Esther. We get a good bit of that too in Ecclesiastes. However, a lot of it is actually very literal. When you look at the Targums as a whole, they tend to be literal translations with, a little bit of supplement added here and there. So, but Targums, for that reason, to define the word Targum is a little difficult sometimes. All right, so I want to give you guys a second, just any questions before I press on. Can I clarify anything for you? And while I'm waiting for comments to pop up, I just want to encourage anyone, if you have any interest in supporting the channel to, right now the big fundraising project is to get a new camera. The thing that I have here is subpar to say the least. Sometimes it goes out on me, and so we're looking to get a real camera here. If you want to help support the channel and the work I'm doing, you can become a member of the channel. All of these live streams, go become private after a couple days so that only the members can see them. It's just a way of raising a little money. You can also, if you want to prioritize your chats, you can, purchase supers there. I think next to the chat, there's like a $ or something. And that's just a way of helping me, to continue doing what I'm doing. The other thing, which is probably more useful for most of you, is to become a member of my Patreon channel, which is where all of my videos ultimately end up in their unabridged format. So anyways, really appreciate your support. All right, let me get back to the comments. Are we assured that these are in fact the words of King Solomon or a scribe? Okay, so I am being intentionally evasive on this with regard to the Hebrew text here. In the middle, I'm being intentionally evasive because I want to, go through step by step with you what the text actually says and does not say. And so what I want to point out for now is that Qohelet is not literally Solomon. So anybody who thinks that Solomon wrote this book, we just have to be clear that they're interpreting Qohelet as Solomon, right? That's fair. Okay? I'm not telling you what I believe and what I don't believe. I'm just saying that if you believe, or if one believes that Solomon wrote this, then they're interpreting Qohelet as Solomon. Okay? But and Ben David is a natural. It's natural to understand Ben David as son of David, as David's biological son, and that is what we're told about Solomon in the Bible. However, Ben David can also mean a descendant of David. And did David have other descendants who were Melech Birushalayim? Yes, absolutely. There are plenty of others. Okay. So right now, I'm not giving you my interpretation because my goal is not to so much to train people to think like me. It's just to train people so that they will have the skills to, to be able to exegete the text for themselves. So I'm being a little evasive. I will give you my views on things as we go, though. Okay. All right. So there I just want to make sure I read all the chats here. I think there's no way to know to prove it was really Solomon who wrote the text. Okay, yes. And there's going to be a lot of evidence that we look at there. So all right. Let me just glance here for 1 second. Just got to go over this other screen. All right. And go. I just have to turn that down. Okay. Good. Good. Okay, so let's go back here to chapter 1 or chapter 1 and verse 2, where we get Havel Havalim Amar Qohelet Havel Havalim Hakol Havel, and please be sure to leave me a comment so that I know what your level of Hebrew is. I want to make sure that when I'm teaching on the text here, that I'm not speaking below anybody's level or above anybody's level. So I want to, communicate there. Yep, awesome. Thank you. All right, so Havel, we said yesterday in the previous broadcast that it comes from, the basic word is Hevel. Historically, this has been translated as vanity, which you can see in the translations below here. Let me just zoom in for you a little bit. Okay, so that's the ESV, but even the Septuagint, in using the term mateiotis, okay, mateiotis, it means vanity, but in the sense of fleeting, ephemeral. We looked this up in the last video as the in the Hebrew lexicon. Okay, first exposure to Hebrew, excellent. All right, cool. So I have a whole bunch of videos, just so you're aware, on the YouTube channel. You don't have to be a member or anything like that, and it'll expose you to the Hebrew script, some basics of Hebrew. And I'm actually writing a brand new Hebrew grammar that I'm in talks with a publisher. I think they're interested in taking it, where it's going to be a little bit, it's going to be a little different, where we get some medieval interpretation, Masorah, some text criticism. But I'm actually working on it, and there's going to be, I'm going to be producing videos on that as I go. Hebrew's intermediate. All right, cool. So we've got people from different levels, and that's cool. And I'll try to make sure that these videos have something for everybody here, okay? So Havel Havalim, vanity of vanities, the first word in the Hebrew text, okay, is, and I'm putting this in the chat here for you, we typically pronounce it as Hevel, okay? And it means fleeting, it means ephemeral, things that are here 1 minute and gone the next. And oh, by the way, this name, we actually have a figure in the Bible who has the name Hevel. And if you weren't on the broadcast yesterday, can you tell me who it is? Can you think of anybody in the Bible who is named Hevel? Well, I'm going to show you where it is because I want you to, be able to find this yourself here. Okay, but while you are giving me the answer, oh, well, I guess I showed you the answer here. Sorry. And here it is. It's in Genesis 4:2. Okay, so Vatosef laleret. Okay, that's right. Yep, it is. It's Abel. Very good. Okay, and so Vatosef, and again, Vatosef laleret, and again she bore et achiv. Okay, and again, she bore his brother, and uh, actually cursed them. I don't know if it's true or not. Hey, listen, I'm totally okay with whatever. Look, I'm going to keep teaching regardless if donations come in. And so don't worry about it. You don't need to apologize. Okay. Here to pass along knowledge. I appreciate help wherever it comes in, but I want you to stay either way. All right. Vatosev laledet et achiv. So again, she bore his brother, who is et Havel, et Havel, okay? And that's the pausal form, but the regular form is Hevel, okay? Vaihi Hevel roe tzon, and Abel or Hevel was a keeper of the sheep. Now it's interesting, regardless of what the etymology might have been, that this figure is known Hevel. The word Hevel elsewhere in the Bible means here 1 minute and gone the next. And in the course of time, I'm just going to read from the translation here. In the course of time, Cain brought to the Lord an offering of the fruit of the ground, and Abel also brought of the firstborn, and of their fat and portions. And the Lord had regard for Abel and his offering, but for Cain and his offering he had no regard. So Cain was very angry. His face fell. The Lord said to Cain, why are you angry? And so on. Verse 7, if you do well. Okay. And then chapter 4 and verse 8. Cain spoke to Abel, his brother, and when they were in the field, Cain rose up against his brother Abel and unalived him. And so, in a sense, he is here 1 minute and gone the next. He's an ephemeral figure. And so when we go back to Ecclesiastes here, let me just switch this up. And so when we go back to Ecclesiastes chapter 1 and verse 2, if you're thinking in terms of the broad scope of the Bible, you say, oh, wait a second, there's a figure who has this name. And when he says Havel Havalim, it means something to the effect of the most fleeting, the most ephemeral. But, if you look at Michael Fox, who is a great Jewish scholar, and I shared this yesterday on the broadcast. So he did the JPS commentary on this, and I'm just going to show you his translation because I figure it's good to see these things rather than just to hear me talk about it, right? Okay, and you see how he translates it as utter futility. And throughout our broadcast together, over many, many episodes or whatever we're calling them, lessons, we'll talk about why he goes with futility, okay? But all that to say, vanity of vanities, however you want to translate it, the most hevel thing, okay? I'm going to leave it vague and try to be consistent with that. The most hevel thing, until we figure out what hevel really means and we can evaluate all the options, okay? So the most hevel thing, says Qohelet. Amar Qohelet, if you're reading along in the Hebrew, boom, there you go. The most hevel thing, says Qohelet. Havel Havalim, the most hevel thing, Hakol Havel. Everything is hevel, okay? And it dawned on me that maybe I should include an interlinear for those who are joining us here. And, how do we do this? What's the best way to do this? I know what to do. Hang on 1 second. Let's duplicate this. Bear with me. Duplicate tab. And so in this one, boom, I'm going to shut off the interlinear. Okay. There we go. Or that one, I'll keep it on. This one, I'm going to shut off the interlinear. So hopefully that, yeah, there we go. So I can go back and forth for you guys now if you'd like. I prefer not to keep it open the whole time, but yeah. So walking through the interlinear with you, Havel Havalim, you can see these are both forms of the word Hevel here, okay? And so the most vain thing, Amar Qohelet, says, there's the verb Qohelet. This is what Qohelet says. Havel Havalim Hakol Havel. Everything is Hevel. Okay. All right. And yeah, keep throwing your questions in there. All right. So if you want more clarification on what chapter 2 does, or I'm sorry, what the Targum does with Ecclesiastes 1 and verse 2, Good question. Okay, so let me get to that question one sec. So if you want to understand what the the Targum does with Ecclesiastes chapter 1 and verse 2, you can see that the Targum says it's everything that he and his father David did. You can just read along in the bottom right here. Everything that he and his father David did because of the sin of Israel in the exile was vanity. So it's a very specific translation, very specific interpretation, I should say, that's there in the Targums. Yeah. Okay, but here that's not what Ecclesiastes says. It says everything is Hevel. Everything is Hevel. Okay. All right. Now we have a question which says, and oh, you know what? Just dawned on me. You guys can't see the chat, can you? I meant to. Hang on one second. I meant to have the chat visible. There we go. Okay. So I'll try to remember to turn it on and off here so we can actually see the chat as it comes up. Okay. And so the question is, so are you saying that, sorry, I got to read this. So are you saying that Cain's brief existence was only futile? No, it's that the problem is the word hevel can mean futile, of no purpose, but it can also mean fleeting, ephemeral, or you might say temporary. The problem is that the word can mean both things. The question is, what does it mean in each context? What does it mean in each context? Okay. Yep. Okay. Hang on one second. All right. Bear with me 1 second. There we go. Got to touch base with the boss. All right, it's that time of day. So anyways, but yeah, you can look at the previous video and it'll tell you, I go into great explanation with what that does there. Okay, so hopefully that helps. All right, but what we need to understand going forward in Ecclesiastes is that this is the thesis statement of the book. Okay, Ecclesiastes 1-2 is the thesis statement of the book, and it's going to be up to us to determine how he works that out. Is this something that he holds to at the end of the book? Does he find that this is persuasive as the book develops and as the book comes to an end? Or is this just the springboard and the starting point? So I'm going to challenge you to think about that. Not going to tell you what I think quite yet. A little too early for that. Okay. All right. So here we go. Let's go into verse 3. All right. All right. So Ecclesiastes 1:3. So in Hebrew we get Ma yitron la'adam b'chol amalo sheyamol tachat hashamesh. So what lasting gain? Now, if you want to write down a list of key vocabulary words in the book of Ecclesiastes, the first one we looked at was hevel. Okay, and I'm just transliterating these for now. If you want to see it in Hebrew, I'm not going to take time to do the nikud, okay, or the vowels, but there it is in Hebrew. Okay. The next one, and this is what we're reading here, this is really a key word in, I'm getting used to working on a PC. I typically work on a Mac, but my friend was so kind to help me out here with, there we go. And let me just, with setting up this gaming computer with double monitors, it's awesome. But I have to get used to the PC keyboard and where all the everything's located. So the word here that's under consideration is yitaron. Yitaron. Okay. All right. I'll be home at 5 sharp. Okay. There we go. Just had to touch base. All right. So yitron. And so what he's asking here in this question is ma yitron la adam. What is the, and now you can see in the translation here, what does a man gain? I'm going to translate this as what is the lasting gain? There's an idea of permanence here. Okay, and that's the key thing with the word yitron, because there's another word portion which is going to come up in the book of Ecclesiastes, which is like temporary gain. Okay, something that's of relative value, that's of temporary value. Um, but yeah, yitron is a lasting gain. So what is the lasting gain? La adam, to a man, bechol amalo, in all of his toil, in all the work that he does, sheyamol, that he does, in all his toil that he does, tachat shamesh, under the sun, which I take to mean in this life. So the way I see it is this: Ecclesiastes 1:2 is the thesis statement of the book, that everything is fleeting, futile, and maybe some translate even absurd. Okay, we're going to have to weigh those interpretations. And this thesis statement is his answer to the question that is posed in chapter 1 and verse 3: what lasting gain does a man have from all the toil that he engages in under the sun? Okay, let me pause for questions here. Any questions while I pour a little more coffee here? Gotta top this off. All right, got my French press with me. Okay, so it seems nonsensical to me. So the comment that just came up, it seems nonsensical to me that God would blame the sins of the whole nation of Israel on their leaders, David and Solomon. Now, I'm just trying to understand with regard to your comment, are you referring to the Targum's interpretation, which, let's see, sorry, it is Hevel, not Hevel, or, oh, okay. Okay, funny. So, yeah, let me move the comments out of the way just so you guys can see the translation. So with regard to 112's question, or comment, I'm wondering if you're referring to what the Targum says over here, in Ecclesiastes 1:2. It's throughout the Bible, throughout the Hebrew scriptures. Um, Not everything is blamed on the leaders. Um, a lot of stuff is blamed on leadership, but not everything is blamed on leaders. And a great example where you can, find examples of that. Okay, yes, I'll come back to that in one sec. So, yeah, if you look at the sin of Achan in the book of Joshua, which caused the whole nation to stumble, Achan was not the leader of the nation there. That wasn't something that Joshua was blamed for, yet the whole nation stumbles. A great example is the book of Amos. The book of Amos, with the oracles at the beginning, there's 8 oracles. And yeah, it goes after leadership, but then it seems to also include the sins that the hoi polloi committed, that just people who aren't in leadership, just members of the community of the family of Israel. And so I think it's a both and proposition. It's more of a spider web. It's not that there's just one person to blame. Um, you know, so yeah, that's how I look at that. I see in the comment here. Let me bring the comment back up. Okay, and it says that I made a comment before that I may have misinterpreted, or that you may have misinterpreted. Yeah, I sometimes I forget what I say. So if you all of Israel's sins. Yeah, I think that might just have been a miscommunication, maybe. I can't remember what I said, so I apologize for that. If you remember exactly what I said, or we play it back later or something, let me know. But with regard to Ecclesiastes 1:2, what he's basically saying there, what the Targum is saying, is that David and Solomon did so much good, and it all came to naught because of Israel's sins. That's what I was getting at there. So I'm sorry if there was any confusion there. Okay. All right. So let's go on to verse 3 here. All right. So ma yitron la'adam b'chol amalo sheyamol tacht shamesh. Right. Let's have a look at the Septuagint here. and it says, what surplus exists for people in all their toil, which they toil under the sun. Not a bad translation, okay? The idea of surplus here, so peresia is, is the idea that we are net positive, okay? And I'll even bring this up for you just so you can see, like in the in Greek literature, in Kini Greek literature, beyond the regular or expected amount, a surplus, an abundance, okay? And it's used excess, okay? Brought gifts beyond the, yeah, and so you see citations from the Septuagint as well as other texts there. So, yeah. You're very good in Hebrew. Oh, you're very kind, actually. My name is Chris. So, yeah, but you can just call me Chris. That's fine. I, got a PhD from Jewish Theological Seminary in New York City, and I give a lot of credit to my Jewish rabbis and teachers. I'm personally a Christian by faith, but I'm deeply indebted to the Jewish teachers under whom I studied. And so I'm really very grateful for the experience at Jewish Theological Seminary. And whatever I do well, I credit most of that to my teachers. So thank you for the kind words, though. So ma yitron la'adam b'chol malo. Okay, good. We talked about that. Let's have a look at the Targum now. So let's just let's do a word count, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, depending on how you slice it. 8 words. Look at Ecclesiastes 1:3 in the Targum, okay? And I'm not going to even count the words. I'm just scrolling through for you there, okay? But it ends up being about 16 and 20. I'm going to call this 25 to 30 words, okay? But since I don't think that, and thank you very much. I see the nice comment there. Really appreciate it. So let's have a look at Ecclesiastes chapter 1 and verse 3. We'll just read the translation because I don't think anybody, at least if I'm wrong, it doesn't sound like anyone's that strong in Aramaic yet. So maybe it's better if we stick with the translation, which is okay. So after he dies, what surplus, and that's how I translated this. So again, this is my translation. The word here, so mutar in the in Aramaic is basically the same as we get in the Septuagint. So what surplus does a person have from all his toil which he undertakes beneath the sun? Well, that's a pretty literal translation there. Pretty literal translation, all right? Beneath the sun in this world is a clarification, because under the sun or beneath the sun is essentially it means in this world, okay? So in this world, and yeah, there we go. All right, and so here we see the Targum is really just offering some clarification of the Hebrew. It's taking an idiomatic statement, and it's offering clarification. Okay, all right, there we go. And boom. All right. And all right, so let's go on here. So after he dies, now wait a second. It didn't say that in the in the Hebrew, did it? Okay. So these words here, batar dimut, okay, I'll highlight them. That's really an addition. Okay. And tachat shamesh, b'mlo hadin. Okay, so what surplus does a person have from all his toil which he undertakes beneath the sun in this world, except to occupy himself with the Torah? And you say, hey, wait, time out. Where does Ecclesiastes say anything about the Torah? Okay, it doesn't, at least not yet. Okay, we'll have to wait and read the rest of the book. But it does not say anything about the Torah yet. And so here we have, yes, interpretation in the Targum. Okay. And I'll, yeah. And, okay, here we go. Good. So occupy himself with the Torah in order to receive before the master of the world a complete reward in the world to come. And you say, hold on. So after he dies, not there. World to come, not there. Okay. And so there it is, the world to come, l'alma date. Okay, boom, there you go. And so this is a very Jewish translation here, a very Jewish translation. There's a lot of Jewish theology into it, that goes into it. Okay. And so we see that the Targum is an expansion. The way I read the Hebrew text of Ecclesiastes is, yeah, essentially that is what he's saying, at least the after he dies bit. I do believe that Qohelet, or the writer of Ecclesiastes, is asking, hey, if we all do die, then what is the point of this life, right? Yeah, it is. It's absolutely very interpretive. Okay. So, yeah, but I do believe that it does capture the heart of what's at the issue here. We haven't read about death yet, but under the sun is very different from under the ground. Okay. And so he seems to be talking about, while we're alive, what are we actually building? What are we amassing here that is going to carry us, follow us into the next life here? Okay. And is there a next life, or do we just die? So there's something, very philosophical about this. Okay. All right, let's go on. Let's do another verse. Okay. So here we go. And chapter 1 and verse 4. And we'll start with the Hebrew. So, do holech v'do ba, a generation goes and a generation comes, v'ha'aretz leolam omadet, but the earth remains forever. Now, this is the start of a poem. Okay, so with this verse, pardon me, with this verse, we begin a poem. Now, it doesn't tell us in the Hebrew that a poem is beginning, but there is a clear rhythm to it. Dor holech v'dor ba v'ha'aretz le'olam omadet. Okay, and we're going to see that what follows in the next bunch of verses, it's basically one big long poem, which is essentially, as I understand it, the basis for the song "Dust in the Wind." Okay. And while Dust in the Wind does not um, quote this part of Ecclesiastes literally, it does seem to address these basic issues. And if you watch the YouTube video on the story of I don't know how to pronounce his name, Kerry Livegreen, I think his name is. I might be mispronouncing his last name, but when that song was written, it was part of, he was going through a spiritual journey, and I suspect that this chapter actually influenced his writing of those lyrics. Okay. Anyway, so doholech doba va'aretz leolam omadet. I want to talk about the word leolam for a minute. Okay, which is often translated as forever. And you see, I just happen to use, I got to get let me get the comments out of the way so you can read the translation. There we go. All right. So the word forever here. Okay. And the only problem is olam seems to mean remote time, time in the future. And this creates a lot of interpretive problems when we're reading the Hebrew scriptures. Le'olam does not necessarily mean eternity. It means remote time. You know, in the long term, a long view, right? Yeah, and I'm looking at the comment here. I think Solomon was depressed and depressed the entire house of Israel because he had all the material in the world and the riches and camels and right. Yep. And so that's a good point. Thanks, 112, for chiming in there. Sorry, I didn't put the quote up so everybody can see it there on the screen. But yeah, it he certainly did. The question is this Solomon who's writing this? And so that's what we have to figure out here. Okay. So, all right. So the a generation comes, a generation goes, generation comes, but the earth remains. Yeah, forever is good. Eventually it will come to an end, but for remote time, we might say. And the reason why I'm making so much out of that remote time business is because there's a section in Ecclesiastes where translating forever is probably going to cause us to miss the mark, but we'll see when we get there. Okay. All right, the Greek, as you can see, and I don't want to go through the Greek in detail, but you can see from the New English translation of the Septuagint. No, you can't see it because I have the comments up. Sorry. Now you can see from the New English translation of the Septuagint that the Greek is literally translating the Hebrew. Yep, and yeah, so and I see the comment there. We get resurrected eventually. Yeah, so for me as a Christian, yeah, that is something I absolutely believe in personally. And I know that, there, the thing I want to do is when we're reading Ecclesiastes, even though I personally am a Christian by faith, I like to push my Christian views off to the side while I examine the text. Simply, I mean, for the most basic reason why is that Ecclesiastes is pre-Christian. And so if we're reading it literally, if you will, then we have to say, okay, well, for those of us who might believe in what the New Testament says, in view of Scripture and that sort of thing, a guide to or a foundation for our theology. We have to recognize that when Ecclesiastes is written, that stuff has not been revealed, right? So that's why I'm not going to read my Christian theology into Ecclesiastes. But what we will do later in the book is we'll show how Ecclesiastes did influence the writers of the New Testament, and I have in mind, in particularly, the Apostle Paul. Okay, but we'll talk about that. Okay, so we got another couple comments here. Let me just put those up so everybody can see. There we go. So Leolam is a great and undefined amount of time. Yep, fair comment there. Not going to argue with you on that at all. The second one, I'm not looking forward to Elnai's resurrection. I'll wait. And oh, Elon's AI. Sorry, I had to pause for a second. I'm not looking forward to Elon's AI resurrection. I thought that was I'm a text critic. I'm always looking for text critical errors and something I geek out to. And I thought there was a typo. But yes, Elon's AI resurrection. Yeah, no, thank you. All right, I'll that doesn't particularly give me a whole lot of hope. Anyways, thanks for chiming in there. All right. Yeah, this is why I like doing these live streams better than recording videos where I'm just sitting talking to a computer screen. It's much more interesting interacting with all you guys and gals out there. So, all right, so let's see what the Targum does here in chapter 4, and there we are. So it begins by saying, Amar Shlomo Malka Beruach, Beruach Nivuah, by the spirit of prophecy. So King Solomon said by the spirit of prophecy, okay? And then we get the good generation. You say, hey, wait a second. Where did good come from? In the Hebrew, it's do holech v'do ba. A generation goes and a generation comes. He interprets the Targumist interprets the generations. Okay, so now we get daratava, or the good generation. Okay, ditzadikaya. Okay, of the righteous ones. Okay, the good generation of the righteous is departing from the world because of the sins of the evil generation of the wicked who will come after them. And so the Targum once again is interpreting the Hebrew. Who are these generations? And this is very much a midrashic thing, which is characteristic of Jewish interpretation. So there's two basic types of Jewish interpretation of Scripture. And there's Darash, which can be interpreted narrowly or broadly. And if you understand it broadly, Darash or Midrash is a contextual interpretation. Interpretation that doesn't necessarily limit itself to the context. Okay. Whereas Peshat is interpretation that is contextual, the context, linguistic context, literary context, and so on and so forth. That is the guide for interpretation. The Targum here, this is a contextual interpretation, and therefore someone who is doing, exegesis in the sense that Christians use the word, which is more akin to Peshat, that they're going to say, "Hey, wait a second, this doesn't make any sense." But it's there's a lot of reading into the text here. But this is influential. This is something that was done in the synagogues in Galilee, in many of the synagogues in Galilee in Jesus's day. The Targums arise out of there. Okay, more on that. I have a great interview actually with Paul Flesher, who's one of the leading scholars in with regard to the Aramaic Bible, and I think it's an hour-long interview, just fantastic. Really enjoyed my time with him, and it's there on YouTube, so you can watch that, and he'll give you some deeper insights into that. I see we have a comment over here, so let me just go over, put the comments up. All right, so a strict construction. Can you just clarify what you mean by that? I just want to make sure I answer the question that you're actually asking. Yeah, just give me a little clarification. But while I'm waiting for you to, I know there's a little lag. It's like a 10 or 15-second lag. So while you're putting that up, I'll just keep reading. So King Solomon said by the spirit of prophecy, the good generation of the righteous is departing from the world because of the sins of the evil generation of the wicked who will come after them. But the earth endures forever to bear, the retribution that is coming upon the world because of the sins of the children of men. This is very eschatological, right? When we're going to find out too when we read the Targum of Song of Songs, and I do have one video on that. On Targum Song of Songs, where you also see that is read eschatologically and messianically. Interestingly enough, it's Jewish messianism. Okay, but yeah, the Targum is highly interpretive here. The Hebrew text, though, it's just generation goes and a generation comes, but the earth remains forever. In other words, people are born and people pass away, and the only thing that remains is the earth. So go back to the question. What's the question? Ma yitron la'adam b'chol amalo sheyamol tachat hashamesh. What lasting gain does a man have, does a person have from all the toil that he toils under the sun? Okay? And verse 4 would suggest that the answer to that question is nothing. Okay? All right. Going back to the question here. Yeah, Midrash versus I don't know if you were talking about Rashi here. Rashi or Darash, is that what you meant to write? I'm not sure. Because Midrash versus Rash, yeah, I know, certain people, they read some of these Midrashic interpretations. They could break out in a rash because they're so confused as to where it's coming from. But yeah, I'm just not sure what the rash part means. If it's Rashi, if you mean Darash. Yep. All right. Anyways. Oh my. All right, we can have a little fun with this, right? Anyways, I guess I'm just doing Darash there. Okay, so then we'll do one more verse, and we get, let me move up to verse 5 here. V'zarach hashemesh uva hashamesh, the sun rises and the sun goes down. Okay, ve'el mikomo sho'ef. Okay, and here we get this very curious passage, Zoeach Husham. And it hastens to the place where it rises. The Hebrew text is a little funny here, and so there's some room for interpretation here. But going over, hide the comments for a second. The sun rises, the sun goes down, and it hastens to the place where it rises. It seems to be this round and round and round. The sun comes up, the sun goes down, and tomorrow the sun will come up again, and it just goes on and on and on. Le'olam. In perpetuity, forever, if you will, for the foreseeable future. And so what does a person gain? It would suggest the answer is nothing. Okay. Of course, we have, sorry, I'm trying to get my cursor over here. The Targum, here it's relatively, it preserves the sense. Okay, the sun rises daily in the east, the sun sets in the west. At night it crawls to a place, continuing along the path, the deep, and rising on the moor from the place which rose the day before. Here, the Targum seems to capture the sense of the Hebrew. So, yeah. So, anyways, all right. Well, listen, that's we've been going for about an hour. I have to cut out at this point, but this is just going to be an ongoing series. And yeah, appreciate your tuning in. And when I'm looking to get 10 supers there, if if people want to chime in at any point in subsequent videos, and when I get 10 of them, by people showing their support, then I'm going to do a live Q&A session for those members. So yeah, consider becoming a member of the channel, and we'll see you next time. Thanks, everybody. I really appreciate your support. Really appreciate your tuning in. All right. See you later, guys. See you 112.